Welcome back. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. The 55th meeting of the GST Council is underway in Jaisalmer, Rajasthan, under the chairmanship of Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. The meeting is being attended by Union Minister of State for Finance Pankaj Chaudhary, along with Chief Ministers of Goa, Haryana, Jammu and Kashmir, Meghalaya, Odisha, and Deputy CMs of Arunachal Pradesh, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, and Telangana. It is being said that in the meeting, decisions are likely to be taken to change GST rates on many items. Meanwhile, we're getting to know that GST on e-vehicles and small and petrol diesel cars has been increased by 12% to 18%. Meanwhile, it's important to note that the government has announced a significant change to the GST filing system set to take effect from 2025. One of the key updates is the introduction of two-factor authentication in the e-invoice system and e-way bill, with multi-factor authentication becoming mandatory for all GST taxpayers starting from April 1st, 2025. Joining us live from Rajasthan is Manu Sharma. Manu Sharma, is the meeting now underway in Jaisalmer? And what are your sources telling you? What all is on the agenda?
देखिए उधर सबसे बड़ी बात है कि जो 55वीं बैठक हो रही है काफी महत्वपूर्ण बैठक है। इसके अंदर जो टर्म इंश्योरेंस है, बीमा जो होता है, एक हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस और जीवन बीमा, इसको लेकर के माना जा रहा था कि इस बार इसके जो जीएसटी इस पर कम कर दिया जाएगा और इसकी डिमांड भी हो रही थी। लेकिन जो है जो राज्यों के प्रतिनिधि यहाँ पर पहुंचे थे, जिसके अंदर जो राज्यों के मुख्यमंत्री हैं, इसके अलावा जो वित्त मंत्री का प्रभार देख रहे हैं, मुख्यमंत्री, वो लोग यहाँ पर पहुंचे थे। उन्होंने इस पर विरोध जताया। उन्होंने कहा कि इससे राज्यों के टैक्सेशन पर काफी प्रभाव पड़ेगा, तो उन्होंने इसको विरोध किया। तो काउंसिल ने ये कहा है कि अगली जो बैठक होगी इसमें इसका विचार किया जाएगा, यानी एक बैठक के लिए इसको टाल दिया गया है और राज्यों के प्रतिनिधियों को कहा गया है कि इस पर एक बार दोबारा से विचार करें। इसके अलावा जो बात निकल करके सामने आ रही है वो ये है कि एक तो जो बोतल बंद पानी है, यानी जो बाजार में पानी मिलता है बोतल के अंदर, एक तो ये नोटबुक्स है ये, इसके अलावा जो साइकिल्स है 10,000 से कम कीमत की, इन पर टैक्सेशन जो जीएसटी का है वो अभी 18% है, इसको घटा करके 5% करने पर विचार किया जा रहा है। ये जो आज की जो बैठक है 2 टर्म में आयोजित की गई है। पहली एक बैठक हो चुकी है, दूसरी बैठक अभी चल रही है, उसी का पार्ट है, तो वो अभी चल रही है, उसके बाद में इस पर निर्णय होगा। इसके अलावा जो बाजार से जो फूड ऑनलाइन जो खाना मंगवाया जाता है, यानी जो कई कंपनीज इतनी बड़ी बड़ी बाजार में उतर चुकी है और वहां ये जो खाना है उस पर अभी 18% का जीएसटी लगता है, तो इसको घटा करके 5% करने पर विचार किया जा रहा है। तो ये जो ऑनलाइन फूड सिस्टम जो मंगवाने का है ये सस्ता हो सकता है। इसके अलावा जो छोटी गाड़ियां हैं, चाहे वो पेट्रोल की हो चाहे डीजल की हो, 10 लाख रुपए तक की जो कीमत की गाड़ियां हैं, इनके ऊपर जो टैक्सेशन है जीएसटी का अभी 12% है, इसको बढ़ा करके 18% करने पर विचार किया जा रहा है। इसी तरीके से जो सेकेंड हैंड गाड़ियां हैं उनके भी जो टैक्स लगता है वो भी अभी 12% का है जीएसटी का, तो उसको बढ़ा करके भी 18% किया जाता है, यानी जो 10 लाख तक की गाड़ियां हैं वो महंगी हो सकती है। और सबसे बड़ी बात है कि जो तंबाकू से जो पदार्थ तैयार किए जा रहे हैं, जिसके अंदर चाहे सिगरेट हो, गुटखा हो, जो इस तरह के जो पदार्थ हैं जो तंबाकू से बने हुए हैं, उस पर अभी जीएसटी 28% है, अब इसको बढ़ा करके 35% करने पर विचार करें, यानी ये सब चीजें महंगी हो सकती है। इसका एक सबसे बड़ा कारण है कि आम लोगों की पहुंच से ये चीज दूर हो, महंगी होगी तो काफी दूर हो जाएगी, इसके कारण से इसको महंगा किया जा रहा है। साथ ही जो ब्रांडेड जूते हैं 15,000 रुपए तक के, उनके ऊपर भी जो टैक्सेशन है उसको भी बढ़ाया जा रहा है। और साथ में जो घड़ियां हैं, लग्जरी घड़ियां जो 25,000 से ऊपर तक की कीमत की है, भी जो टैक्सेशन है उसको भी बढ़ाया जाएगा जीएसटी का। तो ये बातें निकल करके सामने आई, लेकिन ये जो बैठक खत्म होगी उसके बाद में निर्मला सीतारमण इसके ऊपर जानकारी देगी, उसी पर इसकी मोहर लगेगी। साथ में टैक्सेशन को जो जीएसटी का जो भरते हैं फॉर्म वगैरह, इनको कुछ रिलैक्सेशन देने पर भी विचार किया जा रहा है। उसका जो तरीका है उसमें कुछ रिलैक्सेशन मिलेगा, ये काफी उम्मीद जताई जा रही है।
जी बिल्कुल, शुक्रिया मनु हमारे संग जुड़ने के लिए। अजय दुआ भी इस वक्त जुड़ गया हमारे संग, फॉर्मर सेक्रेटरी मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ इंडस्ट्री एंड कॉमर्स। अजय दुआ, व्हाट डू यू मेक ऑफ दीज प्रपोज्ड चेंजेस एंड द इम्पैक्ट of them that has been discussed in the GST Council today?
We only know what has come out, in bits and pieces and what the media is carrying so far. But to me it appears that the participation in this meeting, though it's at Jaisalmer, a good place, so to say, is only of, as you mentioned, 10 participants, 5 CMs, 5 deputy CMs. But yet 2 or 3 decisions which I'd like to highlight, which seem to have come about. One is that it's likely that the compensation cess for the states, for compensating the states when in October, November 2017, when the GST came about. For 5 years, to compensate them, our compensation cess was being levied on the GST. That should have actually ended when the 5 years are over and the center has been able to compensate the states to the assured extent. But that is likely to be extended. Some leakages from the group indicate that it might be by 6 months more, and which will take it up to July next year. I would like to see the cess go once the need for it has been, meaning need now, right now is only the income of the center, but is because that's not really shared as it is. Second, that the rationalization committee, which is under the Deputy Chief Minister of Bihar, has probably talked about introduction. It's an interim, it's not a final report, that a new slab be created of 35% tax rate, taking it up from the earlier, 27% or so. I would think that perhaps there is no need, though it's been said that this 35% will only be on so-called sin goods, but 256 of them have been identified what could be considered sin goods. I would like to see per se, I'm not talking about merely for sin goods, that another category of GST rates being introduced. As such, as you know, the talk has been how to simplify the GST and bring it down to fewer slabs than the 4 which exist today. But it seems that we might see yet another slab coming about. Finally, I would think that going forward, there is talk about that the old EV motors and diesel car and small cars, their tax rates be brought down to 12%. I'm not sure if it is 18, but I think the talk is to bring them down from what it is. Popcorn. A lot is being said on the television since the morning that popcorn, which is unpacked and which will attract only 5%, whereas the packed ones could attract 12 and 18%. If it is only sugar coated, 18%. If it is salt and sugar, then it will be 12. There is also talk about duty on rice kernels being brought down. And finally, as I'm saying, what is coming out is that the decision on insurance premium, though considered by the relevant subcommittee, that is being deferred because there has been no consensus on it. And finally, a group under the finance minister or the deputy CM of J&K on handicrafts. There is talk is that while handicrafts we may bring down the duty rate, but if they use skilled labor, then the duty should go up. And there seems to be opposition saying that handicrafts do also employ skilled labor and it's not entirely unskilled, so there is no justification for increasing it. Let me stop at that.
Okay. Also, the e-filing system is something that is going to be seeing changes. Dr. Sharat Kohli, economist, let me quickly bring you in here. Dr. Kohli, what do you make of those changes as well that are planned?
I think the e-filing system, Uday, needs to be simplified. We need to file 2 returns, the traders, the registered dealers. It is a bit complicated. Sometimes they do have to take professional help. Their internal resources are unable to do, so they have to rush from here to there. Then the mistakes happen. And then the mistakes have to be rectified at a cost of heavy penalties sometimes and interest being paid. But I think the attempt to simplify, Uday, has to be genuine. I buy a popcorn at 5%, the loose popcorn you buy at a theater. If it is packed, it's 12%. And if it is wrapped with masala, if it has got caramel on it, then it's 18%. So, you know, this complicates the matter. When you complicate things in that manner, obviously it causes confusion. Same goes for garments, same goes for other things. Now, what I definitely would not like to see is a second-hand EVs being sold and getting taxed at a higher rate, because EV is an EV even when it's used second hand. It's EV even when it's sold third hand. So I think EV was meant to be environment friendly. The kind of AQI situation we have in a place like Delhi NCR, where it is severe and severe plus, I think EV should be promoted. If somebody wants to dispose of his EV and wants to buy another EV, I think there should be no tax. Forget about increased rate of tax. So I just fail to understand as to how second-hand EV sold is going to be taxed at a higher rate. So there are anomalies, but see, the problem is that every time we try and simplify, we end up making it more complicated. So one issue is what Mr. Dua said, multiple rates. Then within the rates, there are slabs. Within the slabs, there are categories. So, you know, this is what is going to make it complicated. So I think we need to sit down together, and I think cooperative federalism, which is the base of GST Council, has to shine now. It is time to shine, because if they all agree to disagree, I think nothing is going to be achieved. For example, insurance, no consensus has yet come, although we'll see the outcome in the evening when the PC happens. But insurance is something which covers people for their future. So at least on term insurance, simple life insurance, which is not mixed with an investment product, that rate should be rationalized. Health insurance should be exempt from GST, because, you know, you have schemes like Ayushman Bharat, where about 50-60 crore people are covered. But if somebody, spares a part of his income to pay medical insurance premium, I really don't think there should be GST, because you are investing in your health. And I think it is easing the load on the government. So something that eases the load on the government should be promoted. So there are things, which need to be rationalized. The rates need to be rationalized. The 35% rate and the cess, big issues. Cess is right now being collected by the center, and cess is mostly levied on the sin goods. The rates can go as high as more than 40% because of the cess. Now, bringing in a 35% rate, the states are favoring that because they feel they will get their share. In the cess, because the 5-year period is over, they are not getting their share. So they want this another rate. So the rates go 0%, 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%, and now maybe 35%. So I think more the number of rates, the more complicated your reference table becomes, and the more struggle you have to do. There is something called an HSN, harmonized, numbers. So those HSN codes have to be traced out. Many people, dealers, end up marking wrong HSN numbers, which results in incorrect tax calculation, which results in interest and penalties later on. So I think the meeting should sincerely and diligently take up simplification of GST, just the way the Honorable Finance Minister announced in the last budget that we are coming out with a simplified income tax act, which will be easy to read, which will be very transparent, which looks simple. So I think the complications in GST has to go. We should not forget that each state, there is an administration which levies. Each state has got its own limitations and demands. So I think cooperative federalism in this council has to come to the surface. It just doesn't have to be in theory, is what I feel. And we will know by evening, Uday, as to what is the outcome. But for sure, we are not going to see all the expected decisions that we were anticipating. And we were speculating that probably the rates would be rationalized. And in the times when inflation becomes a pain, very important point today, I think GST is one tool, apart from Reserve Bank of India fiddling with the repo rate and the reverse repo rate. I think GST is one tool which can help you in curtailing inflation. For example, ATF, the air turbine fuel, if that walks into GST, I think that will mark the beginning of the petrol and diesel to also be brought under the GST. So I think these are the things which the GST Council should meet. I mean, they are meeting at a very beautiful place, Jaisalmer. It's essentially a tourist destination. I'm sure all the members must be looking forward to some desert safari and camel ride as well. But I think that will be more enjoyable once the decisions come out to the surface. And I'm sure all the finance ministers and the stakeholders, they are going to discuss this sincerely, diligently, because after all, this is one tax, Uday, which is paid by entire 145 crore population of this country. Even a newborn baby pays GST. The income tax is barely paid by 2 crore people. 8 to 10 crore people file their returns. But GST is paid by every single citizen of the country. So I think the pockets, the wallets, the budgets of each household is involved in this meeting. So that's what I feel, that I think something very productive,
Yes.
something which is
Let
very
me take that to
pleasing
Mithali
the
Nukore,
ear.
economist as well. Mithali Nukore, which decisions do you believe are going to be most crucial in this meeting? Also, some of them are being objected to. How likely are they that they will be put off perhaps to the next meeting then?
Yeah, thanks, Uday, for bringing me into the conversation. I think when we are talking about GST, let's just take a step back. We are talking about rate hikes, we're talking about rate reductions. This is just tinkering. At the end of the day, what is the GST? The goods and services tax is now today the second most important tax for the government in terms of the revenue that is collected. When we compare it to several other emerging economies, India relies much more heavily on the GST for financing its development sector activities than many other countries. And the reason for that is, of course, that our income tax, corporate tax, and also customs duties, which in several countries are important, are not as high. I mean, the compliance is also low, and also even the rates are low. Now, why do we have to keep our rates low? Is, of course, because we don't want a flight of capital and we want people to come work in India, pay their taxes, and increase the compliance. Now, with GST, we feel as policymakers, compliance will be higher. Why? Because you are going to buy commodities sometime or the other. But what we are observing, on the field, on ground, when we talk to, say, MSMEs, and they are the biggest, community of business owners who get impacted every time there is a change in GST rates. MSMEs tell us there are three major issues with the GST regime overall, regardless of what rate they are paying. Number one is that you have to pay your GST as an advance in many cases, right? Let's say that I'm waiting for, even this has happened to me, I'm waiting for one of my clients to pay me, but based on my expected revenue, I have to first pay the GST. They might even take 4 months, 5 months, or 6 months to actually make my payment. But even before I have fully raised the invoice, I have to still go ahead and pay the GST, and then I'm struggling for working capital. The second issue is with respect to actually, of course, the zero tax rate, because in many cases I'm not able to do a reduction for products and services that I may have used. And the third is, of course, for service-based businesses. For service-based businesses, GST is still not providing the kind of regime that we wanted. We wanted to have a regime where it would be simple to have an input tax credit, but even today, when your final product is actually a service, it's difficult to prove where can you have the deductions. So in my view, a lot of these meetings and a lot of the discussions which are happening today are not attacking these structural problems with the GST regime. Yes, we are tinkering with some of the rates, and one thing I fully support is the introduction. I know we are talking about simplification and we want simplification, but at the same time, from a development sector perspective, from a social sector perspective, the sin tax, which is being talked about at the 35% rate, is a need of the hour, because we have to create more and more revenue from the highest rated goods, from those goods which are considered luxury items, given the amount of income inequality we are seeing in our country. So that is something that I actually support it, even though it will create a little bit of complication in terms of the number of rates increasing again. And secondly, what I don't agree with in terms of the rate tinkering is, I totally agree that all the renewable energy sector products need to be grouped together. You cannot group electric vehicles with transport sector. They're actually renewable energy and like climate mitigation adaptation instruments. So all climate mitigation and adaptation instruments should be taxed at the lowest rate, which is 5%, in order to move people towards those goods and services. And anything which is second hand, in any case, should be of a lower rate, because we are trying to create circular economies. We are trying to create an economy where you disincentivize people from only purchasing new products, but also encourage people to reuse, recycle products. So I think that's where we really have to think about the current tinkering which is going on. What is very good also in the current tinkering is the aviation regime which is being considered, because then aviation turbine fuel can also be offset. But having said all of this, it is very important to build the political economy consensus around these rate tinkering as well as the structural issues I pointed out. Because a lot of state governments are using, the structural issues of the GST and saying, oh, the GST doesn't work. But it actually works. As a concept, it's a tax which has yielded a lot of revenue for the government. It has brought a lot of informal MSME businesses into the tax net. Yet, because of the process challenges and the structural issues, there is a lot of negativity around it. So I think that's something we continue to grapple with and have to address. Over to you, Ojit.
In fact, quickly take that to Yogendra Kapoor, who's also with us. Quickly, Yogendra Kapoor, as far as, of course, these changes are concerned, which do you believe could possibly be the most significant, from food items to EVs to, of course, other small petrol diesel vehicles as well? A lot on the agenda of the GST Council for this particular meeting.
Right away, I would like to start with the differing decisions on issues of national importance is something which is beyond my understanding. Now, here I am absolutely critical of the government in terms of the health insurance that we are looking forward to. Why I say so? When we look at the statistics, majority of the population of India is not insured under health insurance. We also see, when we look at the World Inequality Report, that the 50% of the population of India, which is, the down 50%, the share of those population have decreased over a period of time. So what I am trying to suggest is that it was very important to take decisions in terms of reduction of GST rates on the insurance policies as such, which the government has just deferred in this meeting. Likewise, I would also like to say that the food delivery apps which are in operation, like Swiggy, Zomato, it was also expected that the rates will come down from 18% to 5%, which has not taken place. So I think we need to understand that, high taxes are always a deterrent towards, I would say, a voluntary compliance. That is also reflected by the fact that we see that even despite the best of efforts by the GST system as well as the income tax department as well, we still see that leakages as well as evasions taking place. So I am of the opinion that going forward, it's very necessary that the issues of national importance should be taken seriously by the council, and the reduction of rates is very important, because especially when we look at the health sector, we have to understand that if only we are going to produce a healthy India, it will be a skilled India.
Yes. Okay. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us on this debate. We've run out of time. Let's slip into a short break. Much more on the other side.